And a very pleasant good afternoon, everyone. I am Jonathan McNamara, and welcome to another episode of JMU Sound Off, a non-traditional time for us in the Sound Off crew, as we are all getting set for tonight's matchup between James Madison and Arkansas. Between James Madison and Troy in the Sun Belt semifinals. Big game tonight, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, as the Dukes try to punch themselves into the Sun Belt finals. Really excited for that game. A big game this afternoon for JMU women's basketball, remaining undefeated in their quest to go undefeated throughout the entire regular season and the Sun Belt tournament, as they get an 89-65 win over Coastal Carolina. So congratulations to Sean O'Regan and the entire JMU women's basketball team. We're going to talk a little bit about that game and preview their matchup on Monday. We're also going to have a conversation with two members of the JMU football team today as a part of our Montpelier Collective Athlete Spotlight. We're going to go over a little bit of what they did yesterday as part of a service opportunity through the Montpelier Collective in working in support of the American Red Cross, as well as Rockingham County Fire and Rescue. A great day in Harrisonburg, as those two student athletes continue the trend of JMU football, continuing to find ways to build bridges to the community and to make the Harrisonburg and Dayton area a stronger, more resilient place. This has been great to see as we continue to see our programs continue to find new and creative ways to give back to the community. So we want to shine the light on that, as well as look forward to spring football practice, which will begin on Monday. As always, we want to thank our sponsors for their support of JMU Sound Off. As always, the Montpelier Collective want you to stay tuned over the coming weeks. We're going to have another announcement coming from the Montpelier Collective about the third edition of the bourbon that is so great that in terms of not only being a product that fans have really responded well to, but also the role that it plays into helping student athletes on campus. So stay tuned to that, championsdr.com. Also want to thank our friends from Where's Woody, as well as Talent Corp, Your Purple Nation, and Shoker Enterprises. It is their support that allows our show to be possible. And with that, we're going to bring on the other members of our Sound Off crew, Michael Evangelista, Taylor Atkins, as well as Steve Brown, who is trying to get with us. He is actually down at the Sun Belt tournament, so we hope he's able to pop on a little later. Guys, before we get to our two football players, we'll start with you, Taylor. Your kind of fast thoughts before we get on with our broadcast.
I mean, it's an exciting Sunday. The women have already punched their ticket to the championship game, and now we wait a few hours to watch the men do the same and hopefully have a good Monday of basketball tomorrow.
Yeah, they look good, and a good crew of purple-clad Duke supporters down in Pensacola making their mark on the game and in the stands. It's been great to see some familiar faces getting some screen time on the broadcast. Michael, you're actually in Charlottesville, which is a rare occurrence for you. I feel like you're jet setting all over the place. Your fast thoughts, I know you're probably excited for tomorrow. Not only all the basketball action, but spring football practice gets underway. It feels like it was just yesterday. We were all in Boca Raton for the bowl game, and that means the 2025 season is right around the corner.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, right? We've got spring practice starting tomorrow, women's basketball going undefeated, Sean O'Regan just flexing on the sideline, just looking good in his polos as always, just all his offseason workouts, working it out. And obviously we've got, the spring game coming up on April 12th, lots of really good things happening. But yeah, it's good to be home. Life is certainly lifing right now. But speaking of the Boca Raton Bowl, shout out to the Alpha Dogs, by the way, flexing with us, the new white hoodies and such. So it's been good, man. It's good to be back online. It's good to have our supporters back with us as well.
Awesome. Well, with that, guys, we're going to get really quickly to our Montpelier Collective Athlete Spotlight. Again, on this program, we always try to build connections to the student athletes of our programs at James Madison University that not only do incredible work on the field, but give you a little insight into who they are as people. And we've got two members of JMU football with us today, Josh Toner and Jalen Sanchez. Guys, I had the pleasure of interacting with both of you yesterday in what was a really awesome day. 19 players from JMU football out in Dayton, going door to door with the American Red Cross and Rockingham Fire and Rescue, installing smoke alarms as a part of the Red Cross to Sound the Alarm campaign. This is just one of a number of initiatives that I know your teammates have also been engaged in, some reading days as we build connections to the community. And I'm going to start with you, Jalen. Obviously, you're new to JMU football, transferring over from Villanova, joining what looks like it's going to be a stacked wide receiver room for what we all are excited for, what could be a really great fall for this team. But you said something yesterday that it really struck with me, because you said, you're not here just to play football. You're here to make the community better. Give me just a little insight into that comment that you made yesterday and how it really fits into this strategy for this program of trying to build deeper connections to the fans who come out on Saturdays and support this program?
Teams with the best teams have the biggest influence, and that doesn't only come on the field. It's not only on the field when you're playing that game, and the crowd is hype on a fourth down stop, or on a red zone third down touchdown. It's got to be all throughout the week. It's got to be not just with the fans, but also with those people in the community who sometimes can't come to the games, or like we were taking a part in yesterday. Going over to where we were stationed at in Dayton, and walking through those complexes, and just you're able to see really how people in Rockingham and in Dayton and in all these cities, how they live, and some people live very differently. Some people live a little less comfortably than others, but at the end of the day, it's on us as JMU Dukes to be able to go out there and bring all those people in and make them feel like they're a part of our family. So.
And Josh, what I was really struck with yesterday is, that experience is not something that's traditional for you guys. It's a really uncomfortable position, maybe at first. For starters, you're not used to going in and installing smoke alarms. You're also not used to going door to door and the unknowns that come from it. But I was really amazed at how you all embraced the moment and embraced what you were there to do. As once we started finding some homes that, we knocked on a door and they said, well, we think our smoke alarms are working, but we found out actually 2 or 3 in the house weren't working at all. You guys really got into it. We're kind of talking with each other. One guy's up on a ladder, another one's, drilling holes in the ceiling. But then it was also just those conversations you were having with those residents. Just talk about that experience and what you all took from it. Again, as Jalen said, trying to build deeper connections to those who support this program, but also just people in the Harrisonburg community that need that type of support.
I would say talking to the people of Dayton was a great experience. They were very friendly. They were some of the greatest people to just be around. They welcomed us into their home. I understand we were trying to help them, but they were so nice. They welcomed us into their home. They offered us anything we needed. They asked us questions. They were very interested in anything that we had to do, what we wanted to do, and we were just so happy to be there. They had great hospitality. They asked us questions about our majors. It just felt great to service just people that really wanted us to give back and wanted to know about us and know about our lives. I know one family even gave us some fresh chicken eggs, actually. So it was just a great experience overall for both parties. And Coach Chesney was honestly the person that introduced community service to this program. For the 3 years I was here prior to him, we did not do any community service. So I think it's a great addition, and I'm just blessed to be able to give back.
And now, Jalen, I'll go to you. Obviously, you're one of the new faces in a locker room in an era of college football where there is more movement. How can events like this and the other things you're doing off the field really help to grow the chemistry on this program and the relationships and the bonds that are going to be so critical when you find yourself in tough games in the fall and the moments that every football season presents as you try to navigate towards what everyone hopes is a successful season for JMU football? Because I know that's something Coach Chesney has really preached is the need to get to know each other fast and to build those bonds that are so critical.
Yeah. Coach Ches preaches quality time, and I think that plays a big role. Being a new face, like you said, coming from Villanova, being kind of fresh in that locker room, I'll say this. I'll say it's been very easy to get adjusted. Josh and all the guys, they've been more than open armed to allow me to come in and be one of their brothers and be a part of their family and allow myself to as an older guy in the room and as an older guy on the team now, just allow those guys to come together and like I said, spend quality time, whether it's in the locker room, whether it's we spend all day on that field together, we're lifting every day, but it's the things that you do outside of that facility, the things that you do outside of football that really put the cap on how strong of a connection we have as a team.
Awesome. And Josh, looking forward to what starts tomorrow in terms of spring practice. Obviously, you guys have been working hard. We've all saw the social media videos that the JMU football has put out from your winter workouts and the testing that occurred last week. Talk about your role now as one of the older guys, one of the leaders of this group, and how important getting off to a fast start tomorrow as you make your way through spring practice. I know it's a little bit of an unorthodox start with spring break also occurring this week, but how you're helping to set the tone as you help to implement and orient people like Jalen into this lineup and the culture that's been so successful for JMU football?
I see my role and other seniors' role as to show everyone else how we work here at James Madison. We like to work. We want to win. In spring ball, we want every process to be extremely difficult and have a lot of adversity so we can be the best possible team we can be. I think that's tradition here, and showing the rest of the guys who are coming to the program how we work is something that I take upon myself, and other seniors like me do as well.
Awesome. And Jalen, to you, this is a wide receiver room that brought in a number of names from programs that have had winning seasons and success that are now a part of the culture of JMU football. I just want to hear from your perspective, the excitement you have now coming into the Sun Belt with an incredibly talented room of quarterbacks that are going to be trying to throw the ball to you. There has to be a lot of offensive excitement now, as there's some really strong pieces in place here to look forward to what's going to be a really challenging schedule in 2025.
There is, and we have a great room of receivers, dudes who are excited to learn. Dudes who are excited to be here, dudes who are excited to win, and that's the biggest part. It's dudes who came here who have no sense of selfishness. Everybody's selfless, and all the quarterbacks, like you said, that we have in that room, everybody's getting ready to work this spring. So we're all excited as a receiver room, and especially as an offense, to see how explosive this thing can be.
Awesome. And then Josh, just from your perspective, you've gone through spring practice, obviously a number of times with this program. There's some new faces, obviously, in town as a part of this. We've seen some coaching changes happen at JMU, a new strength and conditioning coach coming into the fold. How do you feel going into practice one in terms of there's a lot of pieces in place, but a lot of new energy in this program that should help us set up for success for what we know? This is probably the most, if not one of the most challenging schedules that this program has ever seen. Obviously, we were going to have Washington State come to Bridgeport for the first time, heading out to Louisville, and then a conference slate that we all know is incredibly tough. Games against App State, ODU in Bridgeport Stadium. This is the time where you kind of set the standard for what's going to be needed for success in the fall.
Absolutely. I think this staff has proved themselves, all the players and everybody throughout this past year. They know how to get it done. They know what we're doing. So this spring, the players and the staff can come together as a whole and just put one step forward at a time to genuinely just build. Because, last spring, no one really knew each other. We didn't trust each other. We had to build all that. That is all built. And, of course, we have a lot of guys come being into the program, and they're going to come right into that, and they're going to also do the same thing. They're going to trust. They're going to build with us. And that foundation was set last spring. So I'm really looking forward to see how that growth shows up this spring with the guys that we have this year, because we didn't have that last year. We didn't have a foundation that was built throughout the past year, and now it's here. It's going into the spring, so I'm really excited to see how it works out.
And I guess my final question for you, Jalen, obviously you've had tremendous success at Villanova. What has been your first impression of how this staff approaches, practice and game planning and the things that you're used to seeing at Villanova? Is there anything that struck you differently, either about the staff or the culture of JMU football or the fan engagement that has you excited for your first season in Harrisonburg?
All of the above. I say all of the above. Fan engagement, the team, the environment. It's just all been very exciting, and being here and being very welcome here. It's going to be very promising. It's going to be an amazing season, and the coaches. The one thing about the coaches that I love is every day is game day. Whether it's a lift, whether it's a meeting, whether it's a practice, whatever the case is. So I know once that season rolls around, it's not going to be like week one, because we already played week one come on Monday. So.
Awesome. Well, guys, I'll let you get back to your Sunday. I know you have a day off before kicking off tomorrow with practice. So first of all, as always, we thank you not only for what you do on the field, but what you do off the field. Yesterday was a true representation of the best of college athletics in play. What you did yesterday, I know was seen by a lot of fans, but as well as a lot of people in Harrisonburg that may not be connected to JMU football, seeing just how impactful you can be and just how dedicated you are to giving back. And that's the type of stuff that I think is going to win over new fans and new supporters of this program. So not only thank you to you too, but also to your teammates for the other engagement that they're doing. And I know you have more planned over the weeks and months to come. So we wish you both a lot of health as you go throughout spring practice. Enjoy your spring break too. I know you guys get a little bit of a break in the middle as well. Enjoy it. You deserve it. And we look forward to cheering you on throughout the spring and as you go through all good workouts, and then obviously game one as we are all excited for what is going to be a special season for JMU football. So all the best to you guys.
Amen.
All right, thanks, guys. All All right, and with that, we'll bring on our other Sound Off crew. Steve's trying to get his camera working, so this may just be an audio affair for Steve. We'll bring him on anyway. So
Well,
Steve,
he's down in Pensacola, right, John?
it'll be like a call-in radio segment for Steve. Steve, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. So, Steve, you're on the ground. Obviously, the women's basketball team comes up with a big win in the semifinals, 89-65 over Coastal Carolina, the game where the offense was really clicking on all cylinders for the Dukes. Set the scene for what it's like for those who couldn't make the trip down to Pensacola. I know you've been there for a number of days with a good group of Dukes enjoying the beaches and everything that Pensacola has to offer. So set the stage.
Yeah, we've got it's a beautiful, beautiful area. We spent yesterday at the beach, so we had a great beach day. Then last night we had thunderstorms that I've never heard before. So an overcast day here, but the arena is a hockey arena, so it's cold. But we've got a good contingent of folks. Alice and I sat at courtside because I bought courtside tickets for the ladies and got to sit down there and see it, up close. And we missed. If you were watching it, I think we missed 8 or 9 layups underneath the rim, and probably could have scored 110 in this game. So it was they look good. They were running on all cylinders. And so we've got a good group of folks. I would say it's hard to estimate. I want to say we've got 200 to 300 people down here. That might be an exaggeration. It's hard to tell, but a lot of people in the arena. I think Coastal had 10 to 20 people in the arena. So it was, and our band blew their band away, and I got to yell at the Chanticleer, which was wonderful. So, to make sure that we could make the Chanticleer feel welcome. But tons of fans, coach seemed great, and it seemed really dialed in, and the guys are really dialed in. I talked to X yesterday on our walk, so that's setting the scene for what's going on. So we've got 7:30 tonight at 7:30, I guess, Central Time, 8:30 your time for the men to play.
Well, I hope you've been running into Brooke Boyd and some of the others that are down there that I know are listening to the show. Always good to see a Sound Off hat in wherever JMUs are playing. It's always appreciated. But we're going to come to basketball a little later. I did want to get everyone's thoughts. Obviously, spring practice starting tomorrow. It's crazy to me that we're already here. As I said earlier in the show, it did feel like we were just in Boca. A lot has happened to this program since the last game, not only player movement, but a new defensive coordinator in Harrisonburg, a new strength and conditioning coach, and a other transition. So I'll go to you, Michael, just where your head's at. And is there anything that you're looking to see early on as we start to get the great reports from people like, Shea Metlin and Katie Harper and Dave Riggert that will be on site during these practices? And I know you'll probably try to make it up as a part of the Alpha Dogs to see some of what's happening on the field. Where's your head at going into Monday's practice, and maybe some things you're looking to see?
I'm just really impressed with the level of team building, but also competition. I think some of the reports came out of these different teams throughout the offseason through winter workouts where everything is counted, right? Like who's going to class, who's not going to class, who's lifting, who's putting up some really good numbers. So you're building sort of like team rapport while you're bringing the team together, but you're also bringing a lot of competitive nature because at the end of the day, we brought in a lot of really good, talented players and everyone's trying to find a spot. So I thought that was really cool to see. I love the new energy around the workouts. We saw the team maxing out on Twitter the other day, or on X, sorry about that. But seeing some of the numbers being put up, especially by the younger players, gets me really excited. But I think we talked about it earlier, man, brand new wide receiver room. Really interesting to see once you put the pads on, who separates themselves. New defensive staff, right? Who's going to really step up, not just from a coaching standpoint, how could you implement the new scheme, but new edge players, new defensive linemen. Who's going to step up in the linebacker room? We have a ton of depth at DB, which I'm really excited about, but who's going to really stand out? And so I'm curious, we've talked about it ad nauseum. I think we're in a much better place just with the staff and staff here having an off season, but I'd be curious as spring practice progresses, where do we want to reload once the portal opens up again post spring?
And to anyone else who wants to take it, obviously, we've talked at length about what's coming this fall. This is a schedule that is in if you look back over the years of JMU football, Obviously, this is our first P4 game that we'll have in Harrisonburg with Washington State coming into the mix. A real gauntlet of a conference schedule, and then obviously throw Louisville into the mix, and then our FCS game is against Weber State. So the work that happens now, the chemistry that's built through these spring practices, and then what comes afterwards, which we know we could go through another player window movement where some of the names that are on our roster might not be there anymore, and then there could be some other players come into the fold once they go through their spring practices. And then, oh, by the way, there's the potential for the house settlement and the roster limit sizes to come into effect in greater view. Why this next couple of weeks is so critical to what we're all trying to believe has the potential, at least on paper, to be a group that could be one of those group of 5 teams that competes for a playoff spot.
I think, most media outlets and most, people that are covering college football, especially the G5, I think a lot of them have recognized JMU as a top 5. I mean, at least not definitely a top 10, I would say, for most programs out there. You see the schedule that's before us, and it's a gauntlet, like John said. And I think the important thing to remember is going back 2 years ago to Coach Cignetti's last season, a season that, a lot of JMU fans and probably a lot of G5 programs around the country say, that's about as close to perfection as you can get without finally getting there. But that quote unquote perfect season, not only was the loss that we had in the regular season, I mean, by the skin of our teeth with that not fumble out of the end zone, but there were 5 or 6 games in that season that, ball bounces the other way. We're barely a 500 team. And so that's where I see the schedule kind of falling this year, where I think that this will be a season where, once again, we're one of the top 5, top 10 G5 programs in the country. I think a top 5, top 10 G5 team can come out of this schedule with 10, 11 wins. But I think a really, really good team could still face this schedule and struggle to be above 500. I mean, that's just how close I think a lot of these games are going to come. I think that the competition that we're going to see on here is going to be difficult. But I want to echo what Michael was saying. If you see the media coverage and some of the social media posts of the team coming out of the winter practices, the fun, the energy, I can't help but think last year, whether you were new to the team or you had been on the JMU team, everyone around you is new. Your teammates are new. The coaching staff is new. And it's kind of the difference between, playing 4 years with your, all of us grew up playing sports, either rec league or in high school. The team that you take the floor with in high school, that everything about them, their movements, what they're going to do on the floor, the chemistry. It's a lot different than when you go over to the YMCA and you play a pickup game with a bunch of guys, might be equally as good, but you don't know who they are. You don't know their attitudes. You don't know what drives them. You don't know everything. And so I think there was so much of a learning curve last year that we just don't have this year. The players have embraced the coaches. They've embraced his philosophy and how he wants to manage this team. So I just think that we have we're going into this season much differently than we did last year. Maybe that's it's an obvious statement. Maybe I'm making a John Madden type comment here, but the excitement for me couldn't be higher, not only with the schedule, but with what I'm seeing coming out of camp, how we came out of the transfer portal, and I'm excited to see what spring ball does.
Yeah, we didn't lose many people either. So I was at my knee doctor on Monday. This is what happens when you get old. Draining the knee and shooting some cortisone, and he went to Ohio State. And he said, "So how are you guys looking?" And I said, "I think we're probably going to be one of the top contenders in the G5." And he goes, "Anybody leave?" And I said, "We had 2 guys go to UVA." He said, "Why in the world did they do that? What kind of stupid move is that? You guys are going to go to the playoffs potentially. And these guys went to UVA, a place where players go to die." And I'm like, I don't know if that's true, but it was just an interesting comment from a guy at Ohio State. And he's like, "You guys are loaded. I'm following you guys. Don't you have that? Your QB got hurt, I know, but it looks like he's going to be in good shape down the road. And did you guys get a bunch of transfers in? And your coach is really," he was just singing the praises of JMU, and he's a Ohio State guy. So, everybody I run into, even on the plane with our JMU stuff on, we're talking basketball, we're talking football. And what I'm hearing folks say, at least internally, and you can see it with the weightlifting videos, these guys are already connected because we've got so much of the core team back from last year. And now you've got, the new guys integrating fast. This isn't like last year where it's a little slower integration. These guys are integrated. They're not drinking from a fire hose, and these guys are comfortable and ready to roll. So that's what excites me about this team.
Well, Michael, I wanted to ask you because I know one of the position groups you had talked about you're intrigued to see is the linebacker room. There's I think going to be a lot of conversation and probably a lot of focus, like there always is, on what happens in the quarterback room. What other position groups that are you going to be kind of zeroing in on to see how these players integrate? What talents coming up through the pipeline that maybe redshirted last year? Are there some names or position groups, particular that fans should be keying in on as they look through the coverage from the beat reporters who are going to be on site doing kind of their daily digests from spring practice?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had like a super exciting answer to this, but as we know, JMU has always been a very much like a line of scrimmage program. And when you look at, Keith Mann graduating last year, and then some of the other folks on the defensive line and who's coming in, we brought in some all conference players at their prior stops. I'm really curious how that integrates. We brought in some really high potential players too, like the kid from Notre Dame that I think is could be either feast or famine for us, right? Especially in the inside or outside. And you look at, we had Josh Toner on. Josh Toner's been a consummate professional for us. He's played offensive tackle. He's moved in at guard. He's come in during injury. So I'm curious, like, how we're going to use him this year with some of our key pieces graduating. But having a 6-year offensive tackle is huge. Having essentially, looking at some of the PRs from the workouts, we see a lot of young players, the Ryan Rebels, really step up in the weight room, seeing how they're going to really hopefully plug in some holes inside as he's recovering from injury and whatnot. So I think it's going to be interesting there. Linebacker is a fun one, right? We've had a lot of seasoned players. Like obviously we had a lot of, Dobbs coming in last year. I see like a Gannon Weathersby really stepping it up this come fall. But then you look at sort of a new linebacker coach, right? A seasoned defensive coordinator coming from Robert Morris brings in a lot of experience, played us really well at JMU a couple of years back, and then a new defensive coordinator. I think all of that plays into a role this coming off season who could really step up. So I'm curious what we're going to play here. But one more comment to you, John. You mentioned the House settlement, a lot of news and buzz around that. I think it's really exciting as a fan to see behind the scenes that Matt Rohn has really put his foot in the ground and said, we're going to be one of the top resource programs in the G5. We're expected to be not only top of the Sun Belt, but to be up there with the Boise States of the world. And I love that we're doing that, right? We're putting that in front of the fan base. We're putting that in front of the other programs lead that we want to set the benchmark, which I think is exactly what we need to be doing. And that attracts good talent, good people, and good resources back to the program.
Well, it's funny you mentioned resources. I was at Ohio State this week for a work conference, and while yes, they have some facilities that are quite spectacular, and in no way, shape, or form don't want to be overstate the comparison between us and Ohio State, but I did find myself because I was doing my my early morning walks where I was trying to make sure that I stayed somewhat active in a day where I was sitting in a conference room all day, and I found myself, my hotel was right next to the athletic facility, so I walked around and saw every one of their venues, and I texted Taylor. I called him one day and I said, "Man, like." Our athletic facilities really stood out in comparison. Our softball facility was very comparable. Our field hockey and lacrosse venues, and this is a program that not only is at the top of Power 5, conferences in every sport, but they're probably the most resourced, if not one of the most resourced programs in the country. And that is something that it just again is something maybe even us as fans take for granted. When we really see the landscape, and I know Taylor, it's something you've spoken to through your travels around. This is why we are consistently a top venue for some of these transfers, because our athletic facilities do stand out. I know I had a soft conversation with one of our softball pitchers who had transferred from Georgia, and she mentioned how our facility stacked up against them. So this is that resource point is not lost on me, and it's something that continues to bode well for us in this time of fluid change as college continues to evolve and what conferences are looking for other programs. And it ties directly into what's happening tonight on the men's side. Is if you look at the venue we play in for basketball and you look at the fan support we're seeing, that this stuff doesn't happen by accident. And it's why we're seeing sustained success across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have for those that are familiar with the Hart School, it's the JMU Sports Rec and Hospitality School on campus, and a lot of their students go into college athletics. A lot of those students come back to JMU, and for a lot of them, it might be their first time out of that JMU bubble. And a lot of them, if you follow them on social media, you see that a lot of students will come back and speak to the classes, and a lot of them talk about they just maybe they just assume things are always going to be so much better because they kind of buy into the mid-major G5 narrative. So they look around and they say, well, I know people love JMU and I know our stadium, our facilities are great, but it must be, exponentially higher at a lot of other places. And it's not just the facility thing like we've talked about, it's the fan support. Let's not forget, we went into an undefeated North Carolina team on a beautiful day in the fall and Saturday. And that stadium was paltry. And I get it that they don't want to see JMU. They have these ACC rivalries and stuff. But just look at their students that showed up that day. I think the fact that we have 8,000 students showing up for Coastal Carolina on a Thursday night, or even the crowd that we had on Thanksgiving break without students in. The place was packed. And I think that has to do with, just the culture that JMU has embraced, not as a football thing, but just kind of as the pride that has become our athletic program. And again, this is a shout out to Matt Rohn. I've never seen someone come in so quickly and really embrace that culture, feed into it, and do everything he can, including having Mallory do the JMU women's hype video this week on social media.
And I'll ask anyone who wants to comment, any other final thoughts just on football in general, because I know we'll be talking a lot about this as we go. I'd say my final comment, at least, is talking to the players yesterday, that there was a consistent theme of how energy, they said, going through winter workouts with this strength and conditioning staff was just different. They didn't criticize the last step, but they just said there was a buzz, the DJ, the environment that was created in the competitions, they all said felt different. And you could just see the excitement on them and how much it really pushed them. And I will say that one of the funnier things that happened yesterday during the community service event is they were still continuing kind of the rivalries and the back and forth that they had built through their team, little breakout teams that they did for winter workouts. Some of them were saying, hey, whoever installs the most smoke alarms, we believe that should count in the standings. And I think that just shows how that healthy competition and that dynamic between those little groups still plays out even when they're off the field. It was really cool to see.
Well, the only thing I'll say about football, just to end it, is two things. One, I'm staring at the schedule. If you see me keep looking down, I'm looking at the schedule. And I think we've talked about this. I saw many people on Twitter the last couple of weeks just talking about how this is the kind of schedule you dreamed about when you thought about going to FBS. I think for so long in the JMU football culture, the schedule would come out and you'd circle those one or two games in the regular season you were really looking forward to and get to the playoffs. And even in the playoffs, you're hoping you get a team that has some regional aspect and it, is not North Dakota State, but just random North Dakota, or what was it, Southeastern Louisiana or something along those lines. But now, the difficult thing for me is literally trying to pick which games not to go to. And because even the away games are easily travelable for a lot of JMU fans. Obviously, Lynchburg, we won't even talk about that, but Louisville is an easy drive, easy flight out there. Atlanta is a real easy flight, real easy drive for a lot of our fan base. Marshall, I do want to hype up Marshall again because we got one of the warmest receptions and just a great, proud program. It's a great atmosphere to watch college football. I'm really, really upset at the Sun Belt office because I knew it was going to be 4 to 8 years before I finally got Texas State away, and so I was planning a time to go back to San Antonio, and they put that daggone game on a Tuesday, and I'm just probably not making it. But the football schedule, and then I do want to bring up one quick thing that Michael, John, and I spent a little time texting about this week. There is a divide in the Sound Off crew that John just is not excited about Buc-ee's coming to Harrisonburg.
It's honestly
game stops.
Look, I would like to say, because we do shine the light on some other media personalities, I was not alone in my feelings on Buc-ee's. I've also want to be known that I'm keeping an open mind, that maybe the Stanton version of Buc-ee's will be superior to my experience in South Carolina. In my defense, I've only gone once, so I'm open to.
You went once by yourself. You did not have an experienced guy to walk you through it.
All the Buc-ee's super fans that listen to this show, Chandler, our producer, who's also sitting right here, is also not a fan of Buc-ee's. So I know he did not. He had a separate experience, which was also not pleasant. But I am open-minded to seeing what the Shenandoah Valley can can bring
So-
to Buc-ee's.
So let me say this.
It's a better.
JMU Sound Off is a platform. All opinions are welcome, and John's opinion of Buc-ee's is also welcome. However,
and it could be wrong.
It started to get a little personal when John took a shot and said Sheetz is better than Buc-ee's.
Oh, no. I said Wawa.
What you said.
I said Wawa. Chandler said Sheetz.
Oh gosh,
So I'm a Wawa guy.
I just
I was going to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. You know, maybe
and I would
we
also like to know
had a
if
little
anybody
liquid
from
confidence that day.
If anyone from Buc-ee's is listening to this program, if you want to have a conversation, I can be the biggest fan there is for Buc-ee's.
I will read the sponsor. If you want to do a paid sponsorship, I will make the ad read on the podcast. And I promise, Buc-ee's, if you're listening,
I will just say my loyalties can be bought in this arena. So let's just there. I will say the little nugget things they had were pretty good. So shout out to Buc-ee's in that realm. I did want to do one last thing on football, because on a serious note, I didn't know we were going to have the Buc-ee's conversation. So transitions a little awkwardly, so I don't know how else to do it, but just to as a podcast and as a fan of JMU, we obviously had some incredibly successful years in FCS football. And many of those years, the coverage that got us through some of the weeks was led by Brian McLaughlin and the team at Hero Sports. And for anyone who has been on social media over the last couple of weeks, you saw the news that unfortunately Brian tragically passed away. I want to just first of all say thank you to everyone in the JMU fan base who made a contribution to his GoFundMe account to help support his family as they go through this challenging time. But Brian was a guest on JMU Sound Off kind of in the early days of the program. He's somebody that messaged me early on when we started this, saying how much he enjoyed seeing some fans who, obviously had very consistent dialogues with him over the years, kind of get into a space that he had made really his own and really put his stamp on just the class that he brought to how he interacted and engaged with those student athletes. And I just did want to come to both of you. I know, Michael, you had a chance to meet him on multiple occasions, and I don't know if anybody messaged him maybe more than you did in terms of the back and forth in looking at recruiting and looking at the dynamics of all of the programs in the FCS landscape as we were, plotting, who were we going to play in the playoffs or who we're going to see there. No one did it better than Brian, and I know he's somebody that kind of touched you in many ways as well.
Yeah, Brian and I mean, we met, I think, back 2014, 2015. He just started out at Hero Sports, which I think was ended up getting purchased by MGM Sports or BetMGM, something along those lines. But I owe a lot to Brian. He was based out in Florida. He had this opportunity to shed an incredible spotlight on a level of football that outside of maybe the diehards, no one even knew about, right? And he had some incredible stories, not just about James Madison, but what was going on in the Dakotas, what was going on in Eastern Washington, what was happening in the Patriot League, and all these incredible stories around also shedding light of the incredible talent that we have at this level, right? So, I've had an opportunity to meet him a couple times. We've hosted him at tailgates at JMU. He's come up to Harrisonburg. He's spoken to our coaches. He's spoken to our staff. And what was awesome is how receptive the program was overall as well. And I just, I owed a lot to Brian. My first, public interview, if you want to call it that, was with him back in, I think, 2015. And he was like, oh, let me talk to this crazy kid on Twitter that loves to talk about how stars don't matter and post offers, and gave me an opportunity. And we grew the friendship from there. So, wow, look at that. I remember that picture. That brings me back a little bit. I think I still have the hats around here as well. So it's tough news, but I'm glad we can come together and support his family.
And Taylor, in an era of sports journalism and podcasting and kind of the media infrastructure around college athletics, there are plenty of people who are willing to kind of have hot takes and maybe post content really just driven by clicks. Brian, to even his own detriment, he said at times, really rejected that idea and just led with focusing on the people and led with focusing on their backstories and the humanity and the human side of sports. That's something that I know we've tried to bring to this platform as we've kind of crafted our approach is to try to focus as much as we can on the human side. But Brian did it really well, and somebody who, again, in an era when we were all trying to scream from a mountaintop how great FCS football was, Brian was the one that really, before some other players got into the space, was the one that really kept the spotlight on it year round with this coverage with Euro, and is something that I know that got me through many a session in the gym or many long walks when his podcast was really the only thing out there to listen to, other than the JMU coverage that we enjoyed. If I wanted to learn what was happening in North Dakota State or in Montana, it was because of Brian's and his insight on those programs.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, it's been 10, 15 years now, where the internet and social media has allowed us access to have coverage of FCS football. But, it wasn't long ago where you just didn't have that opportunity. You didn't have any media outlets giving you anything more than the box score about, what was happening with the top teams in FCS. And I would say a lot of the work he did in Hero Sports, it elevated, it gave that level of football a voice at a time where you started to see College Game Day come to these programs. You started to have North Dakota State with their big run. It was kind of the perfect storm where you had stories coming out of FCS that were once in a generation stories in FCS at the same time having these platforms. But it's not just the platform. You need someone that has a passion for it. And, John mentioned kind of in the clickbait era, there's a lot of people, if you go back 30, 40 years ago, a lot of the people that covered college sports, there wasn't a lot out of it other than for the passion of what they were covering. And I think Brian kind of brought that as an old school element to FCS football and really gave JMU a voice, a neutral voice too. I mean, JMU Sports Blog, there's the Breeze, there's the DNR, and all of those, even our podcast, it's going to come filtered through the lens of a JMU fan. But Brian gave a neutral, unbiased voice to a very good level of football. And y'all correct me if I'm wrong. Was Brian the first ever guest that, if he wasn't the first guest on our podcast, because I remember it was when I was at the beach in the Outer Banks, which would have been in August prior to 2 years ago. We had just started the video platform, and I know Brian came on. So if he wasn't the very first guest that we ever had, he was one of the first. And I don't think of a better person to have started off what has become JMU Sound Off than to have Brian on. So, I know, John, you might mention this. I don't know if there's still a GoFundMe set up, but I know a lot of JMU fans have been, doing a little to lift up his family when he did so much to lift up the JMU family.
Yeah, and again, we'll be sure to post the link one more time on our social channels. Again, if you have the ability to, any amount, anyone who's dealt with that type of loss, especially something unexpected, knows how a little bit of support can really make a big difference in helping that family navigate the most challenging time that they're ever going to experience. So again, to anyone who's knew him, was impacted by him, or simply just read his stories, our condolences. And again, go back, look at some of his coverage. I spent about 15 minutes the other night just scrolling through his Twitter feed and seeing some of his high school content that he's produced over the last couple of months, and then going back and looking at some of his coverage of JMU football. It was a fun little ride through that era of JMU football and seeing his excitement for the success and the growth of this program, I think is something that over time we'll all grow to appreciate even more, because I do believe that, yes, our success on the field mattered, but it was that media crew and that program, the outlet that he supported, and also the other outlets that he spoke to. He was somebody that was interviewed by a lot of larger media outlets that would cover JMU football, and he was the first to say, hey, what's going on in Harrisonburg is special, and that is the type of thing in the recruiting world at that time mattered. As transfers and high school recruits were looking at JMU, I have a feeling they were reading a lot of Brian's coverage and listening to a lot of his podcasts, and we'll never know the true impact of it, but I suspect it's more than any of us can truly imagine. And I know he's watching football up in the sky, probably already working on his recruiting notes for this year as he's coming up with a list of the top FCS quarterbacks. And I'm sure he's pretty excited that Cam Coleman is in Harrisonburg. Jalen Sanchez, these are names in FCS football that Brian no doubt had a profile on or a scouting report. So we'll continue to try to to honor your legacy, Brian, and honor your approach of people first. And I just would have been remiss if we didn't spend some much deserved time on Brian's legacy. And I hope we can continue to look back and at him fondly and his coverage.
I'll say one more thing,
yeah,
John,
please.
Brian. I remember some of the conversations we had, and you mentioned clickbait and whatnot, but he knew that if he mentioned JMU, brought up James Madison, made a press release, tweeted about it, the eyeballs and the reactions he was going to get was going to be 10, 15, 20x more than others. And I think, at the time, it was a perfect storm, like Taylor said. We kind of awoke this monster, and we live in a world now where eyeballs and reactions are important. You can imagine how some of that maybe played into the Sun Belt looking at JMU as a FBS program, other programs saying, okay, they're going to draw attention. They're going to draw, a good buzz. And I remember Brian mentioning to me, he knew that if he talked about JMU, if he mentioned us at all, that there would be some really positive interactions that are going to come for it. And he really put an amazing spotlight on the program, and we're very much indebted to him.
Well, transition to kind of the final segment for the show. Obviously, there's a pretty big basketball game tonight, and we want to be cognizant of the fact that many of you may be listening to this tomorrow, so we'll already know the outcome. So I did just want to ask a broad question about tonight's activity, and also what happened earlier today is winning this tournament and getting JMU potentially into an NCAA tournament for men's. And obviously we're hopeful, regardless of what happens tomorrow with JMU women's basketball, that hopefully their resume is strong enough that lands us in the postseason regardless. But having both of these programs in the NCAA tournament at a time of so much transition, so much uncertainty in college athletics is massive. Probably I can't think of another thing in college sports that touches so many casual fans and maybe even people who aren't fans of sports, but their work fills out a bracket where they do a tournament challenge through one aspect of the community or another. And there's a lot of JMU grads who may not be in tune with platforms like this and the day-to-day coverage, but when they see, wow, JMU's on a NCAA bracket, it maybe gets them to take a second look at the program, and maybe they book their first trip to Harrisonburg that they have in a while, or they go to a basketball game, and like all of us did in Brooklyn last year, maybe they find a way to make it to the NCAA regional site, or they say, hey, we got to get back there in the fall and see what's going on, or it turns on students again to the impact, especially if you could do it 2 years in a row. So Taylor, I'll come to you first on that. The potential for what happens over the next 24 hours is impossible to overstate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to state it is what it is. Your football and basketball programs dictate so much of not only how your athletic program is viewed, but how your school is viewed. And I think kind of the bare minimum for the average fan to care is like, are you making bowl games or are you making the basketball tournament? So our football team in the first year that we were eligible, finally, to go to a bowl game, went to won one. Prior to the years that we weren't eligible, we're ranked in the top 25 and proving that we should have been in one. And then the men's basketball program, 2 years ago, what was a tough way to get knocked out of the Sun Belt tournament. But last year, winning over 30 games, making a statement, playing Wisconsin in a game that was never close. We have an opportunity right now to, again, showcase two incredible mid-major basketball programs in our men's and women's teams. JMU's women's team, I can't exactly remember where they are I know they're top 5 all time in wins in all of college basketball. At one point, they were second or third. It was like La Tech, Old Dominion, Tennessee, JMU, UConn. Those were the 5. I think Texas has found a way to sneak in there. But you're talking about a women's program that is, since this is a JMU fan podcast, I don't need to sell you on the JMU women's basketball program. It's been a dominant program for almost 30 years now, and the way that they've blown through the Sun Belt and go undefeated, this is a special season that can be highlighted even with our women's program having season after season of great basketball. This is something really special. I hope everyone had a chance to tune in and watch the semifinal game against Coastal Carolina today. I hope everyone gets to tune in tomorrow in the championship. For the men's team, I think this point has been kind of highlighted in some of the broadcasts. I think it's only the second time ever that we've won back-to-back-to-back 20-win seasons, with the last time culminating with the 1994 team and the Coluco shot and going to the tournament there. So JMU's men's basketball is in a really special time right now. And if you look behind me to the facility in the background here, I mean, we have a great environment for basketball. The Shenandoah Valley has a strong basketball tradition, and so there's an opportunity to kind of reintroduce that to the community and the non-JMU alums, non-JMU students. We've seen a lot of support coming from them, even in those games where there's a holiday and the students aren't in. So there's a real great opportunity in the next 24 hours to do some special stuff. And the only thing that's kind of frustrating me, and maybe you guys, because this might be something to go kind of round table and kind of talk about, was some of the frustrations you heard from Coach O'Regan and Coach Spradlin after the MAC Sunbelt championship, or not championship, but
challenge.
There we go. Thank you. Was particularly, we played a top 50 or right outside the top 50 Ball State team, beat them, and our net score dropped. And so it just seems like they both kind of spoke to how the net is really just, we're at a disadvantage to the mid-majors. And I'm looking at, the three of the four losses that we have are to teams in the top 10. So what are we, 29-4, 27-4? We're something in 4 in the high 20s, right? The women's team right now. To have 3 of your 4 losses come to that and to still be so low in the net. And I know we're getting votes in the top 25, but this is a really good team, and they've proven themselves against some really good competition this year. So I really hope that we go out there tomorrow, dominate the championship, and make some noise in the tournament. And, the other thing that I'm kind of disappointed about is when they restructured the NIT tournament. I think last year was the first year they did it. So traditionally, if you were a regular season champion and you did not win your conference tournament, you got a bid to the NIT. I don't have the new NIT stuff in front of me, but it's basically they're giving the bids to the power conferences. So I'll just I'll kick it to y'all for your thoughts. But to John's point, with NIL, with a lot of things making it harder and harder for a lot of these mid-major programs to be successful, JMU is continuing to put out 20-win seasons, continuing to knock off P5 programs for the women. The men are continuing to do their thing. And so, give credit where credit is due in making the hire of Coach Spradlin. Matt Roan continues to just say, he listens to the fan base, listens to the donors, listens to the people and the coaches, and just say, tell me what you want. I want to make us successul. And I think we say it all the time, JMU fans need to appreciate where they are right now and what they've been able to experience the last few years.
Well, and the other point about the impact that basketball has just on football, because a big bulk of our coverage today was on football, and obviously it's something we're really passionate about. Walking around yesterday with some of the newer football players, they were talking about what's going on in the Sunbelt basketball tournament, and this stuff matters, and it matters from a brand reputation perspective. That's why we've talked about the everything school thing so much, because the more times you can continue to show decision makers at the college sports landscape that JMU is a program that competes across the board, it makes Matt Roan's job a lot easier when he's trying to navigate why we should remain relevant, why group of 5 programs, not just at the football level, should continue to have a seat at the table. Because, there's already not just the NIT changes. Chandler was telling me about this weekend. There's another postseason tournament that's happening after the conference tournaments wrap up. There's a Big Ten, Big East challenge that's only going to involve those teams. So you're already starting to see kind of the barriers be placed in front of programs like James Madison from being able to compete. And we all know that those are not going to go away, but it's happening more and more. And that's why wins from JMU over Wisconsin matter so much. Some may push back and say, hey, that could just be the thing that leads these programs to isolate us even more. I can't really argue against that. I know that was one of the things I asked after we beat UNC in football this year. I was like, man, is the ACC ever going to play us again? Are we going to see our games against Louisville canceled, or is Tech going to find a way to buy out of that? And it's something, obviously, none of us know the real answer to. But again, the more success you have on the field, I think it makes at least the noise around it more in your favor, as the sports commentators on a national level say, hey, wait, you keep trying to isolate these guys and all they do is keep beating you. So the success matters, and that's why tonight is so important, and what happens over the next 24 hours for both programs can really be impactful about so many things more than what just happens on the basketball court, not only over the coming months, but over the coming years. So Michael, any kind of final thoughts from you? I know we're approaching the hour mark, and there's a lot going on everybody's Sundays, and obviously we want to gear up for tonight's basketball action. Again, anything other on the football or basketball front that you want to touch on before we let our fans get back to their Sundays?
Yeah, I was gonna say let's elevate the conversation even more. I think just to add to what you and Taylor said, let's not forget 4 days ago JMU announced that for the first time ever they had over 44,000 undergraduate student applications for, I believe, oh my gosh, this is getting old, for the 2029 graduating class. And when I looked at the stats, obviously there's a lot more to it, right? Like there's the Common App and all of that good stuff that's made it a little bit easier now for folks to apply. But I think in the last 4 years, it's risen from 31,000 applications to 44,000 applications year over year. So that's another 10, 15, 20,000 people.
And on that though, Michael, so I can't believe I didn't mention this. When I was at this conference, one of our division vice presidents is from the Philadelphia area. And I have another colleague from the Northeast. Both of them came up to me because I had on a little Columbia thing with a small JMU on it. And they said, hey, my son is taking a tour of JMU next week. I have another colleague whose son is a golfer from Northern Pennsylvania who is also being currently recruited. And they not only knew about JMU and were excited to go on the tour, JMU is sending recruiting fairs now out into their communities, and the amount of population, at least in the Northeast corridor, that is now not only familiar with us because of our sports, but that's just how many kids from their own high schools, their own towns are coming down. It's a part of that 44,000 number, and the impact of that is hard to overstate.
It's huge. It's more eyes on the school, more eyes on the university. It's justifying the incredible rise in terms of like buildings and infrastructure. If anyone hasn't come back and looked at what's going on in the village and seeing the new dorms that are coming up, it's phenomenal. But being someone that I work for a Salt Lake City, Utah-based company. And there's a lot of Weber State grads that work for this company, and many of them recognize my background. They remember games versus JMU in 2017 and whatnot. I've got a colleague in Florida that's looking at sending her son up here to check out JMU in the fall because she's heard great things as well. And especially, it's not just me gassing up JMU on one-on-ones and calls. Like word is going around in a very positive way. So when you look at the implication, right, having a women's basketball team in the cusp of NCAA tournament, having a men's basketball team right there, and also taking advantage of the new brackets, by the way, for the conference tournament. You win 2 games and you're in. That's phenomenal. And then when you're going into work and you're getting these brackets filled out and seeing the JMU logo front and center and having to click on it, looking at the stats, clicking on the school, once again, it's just taking advantage of not just like a very proud alumni base, but a ravenous one at that, that's just growing at an incredible rate.
Well, and I'll add to that too. Being down here in bold and beautiful Botetourt County, there are a lot of Hokies around here. And, for the last few years that I've lived around here, Virginia Tech fans almost unsolicited be like, man, I think JMU'd kick our butt in football and basketball right now. And the funny thing about that is I go back to when I was in school, and it wasn't even like, first of all, that comment would have never been made, but most Virginia Tech fans wouldn't have even acknowledged that, like, you're even in our division. I mean, they would be like, technically blah, 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 you're basketball, but so it's gone from like an acknowledgement of not even allowing to be recognizing JMU as a Division I program to people constantly, the compliments I get from Virginia Tech fans. And then the unsolicited, like, we probably wouldn't beat them right now in most sports. It shows you how far we've come. And this kind of goes back to our conversation about Brian. I think about the students at JMU right now who have grown up with social media, who have grown up with a JMU football team that's never won. Matter of fact, in the springtime, my Facebook memories, a lot of pictures of the construction of Bridgeforth will pop up. And, I still look at Bridgeforth and it still amazes me because I remember what it used to be. But again, the students today, they probably look at Bridgeforth as small because they want to see the other side, because that's all they've ever known. And so I want to encourage, actually, this goes back to the very beginning of our conversation. I want to encourage the alumni and the students that have just this fire in their hearts for JMU and this strong passion for, they bleed purple, to keep that up, because there's going to be the years where we're not 30 and 32 wins in men's basketball. Our women's basketball team's not knocking on the door of 30 wins. Our football team is not ranked top 25, but there is something we can control. We can't control the wins and losses on the fields, but our fan base can continue to control the passion we have for JMU, show up in these masses, and have people take note of us, so that whatever the college athletics waters will be 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now, that JMU is in a position to not only navigate them, but to be attractive to anyone and everyone that wants a top-tier college athletic program paired with a great education, a great campus, and a great alumni base. So, keep it up, JMU Nation, and let's go out there tomorrow night and bring home 2 championships in men's and women's basketball.
Awesome. And with that, guys, I'm excited for tonight. I'm just gonna be honest. I have a good feeling. I don't know. We'll see. And I know seeing Barry cheering as loud as he was on the broadcast, and Afton and everybody down there in Pensacola, I just feel like they have a few more hours now. Get a little rest, get some food. Probably a little bit harder on the pregame tonight than they were the last couple of days. And I think we're going to have a raucous crowd that's going to show well as we make our way towards tonight. So thank you to everyone joining us again on an afternoon version. We wanted to be respectful of both programs today. That's why we moved the schedule. One more shout out to not only Jalen Sanchez and Josh Toner, but the 19 players yesterday who gave it their all and really made it an investment in the safety and security of the area of Dayton. That is worthy of applause, and really special shout out to the Montpelier Collective for continuing to facilitate these community service opportunities, but also shout out to Bob Chesney and his staff for making this a priority. This is the way you build deeper connections and build a broader support in the Valley as we try to make this the Valley's team. I know that's something we've pushed on this broadcast. I know it's something Matt Rohn has pushed. So the more we can see this type of engagement with first responders and the rescue community that's there, that's going to have a big impact. I did see one of the paramedics yesterday say, I've never made it to a game. I didn't go to JMU, but she's like, I got to come see you guys in the fall. And the other thing is the interesting and the facial expressions for people when they opened the door and they saw 3, 6'4", 270 players in their doorways, and they said, "Why are you guys here?" There were some great conversations with that, and kids in the neighborhood that I have a feeling are going to make their way over to Bridgeforth Stadium next year, and that's going to be cool to see. So on behalf of Taylor and Michael, and I know Steve, who's had some technical difficulties today, enjoy the games tonight. We'll be back over the next couple of weeks with some additional coverage of what's happening in spring football. We'll also stay tuned if we have news around the NCAA tournament. We may have some kind of spontaneous pop-on episodes or Instagram conversations. We'll let you guys know on our social channels. But as always, we are truly appreciative of your support to the Montpelier Collective, Where's Woody, Talent Corps, Shoker Enterprises, and YourPurpleNation.com. Thank you. And as always, go Dukes. We'll talk to you guys soon.